Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is Monday, July 21st, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's choosing to join us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Rice on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. You can download the actual worksheet process itself. And if you choose to listen to those files and audio files, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd greatly appreciate you sharing. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. And or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. If we get a question or a comment from you, we will address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or your input. And it's a Monday morning, and we have plenty of time for comments and questions, perhaps even before getting back into reading from the book, A Walk in the Physical. And I was marveling this weekend as I was going through some of the other books that I've been perusing recently. One of them is by Gabrielle. It's called Gabrielle Bernstein. It's called Judgment Detox. And the similarities between what she's talking about, what she's learned about the detrimental nature of judgment, etc., and having discernment as one thing and judgment as another. And the more I listen to that, the more I think it's like an echo chamber. We're all just reading the same kind of source material. And it goes deep and it goes far back. And there are a lot of people who have understood over the years, not high percentage wise, but there have been people over the years who've understood, you know what? It makes a heck of a lot more sense to live your life from direct observation than it does to live in belief or dogma, or to be living from ritual. So please feel free to raise your hand if you have a comment or a question for us. I'm going to return to the reading of the questions and answers from the book A Walk in the Physical by Christian Sundberg. And I believe I've read this one before, but I'm going to repeat it. Why do we have to do things like meditation to get awareness of higher realms? And Christian writes, well, the reasons are complex, and the short answer is that, in the broad sense, is that the experience of Earth involves a set of constraints upon consciousness, and those constraints facilitate or make possible this personal, specialized experience. In other words, that is the very nature of this physical experience we're in, where we volunteered to engage in an experience where we do not know, because that prompts in us an unbelievably real and challenging internal and external experience. So we're diving in, we're saying yes, we're volunteering for these life experiences. And it's entirely possible that we're volunteering for them and diving in at a level that our soul, that our consciousness itself is willing to engage, and our ego is not so willing to engage and not so happy that we've agreed to this. He writes, the veil is rigorous and it's very consistent. Spiritually, there's nothing that we, quote, have to do, close quotes. And yet, from a technical standpoint, the sense data and local thoughts seem completely real and convincing once our awareness has kind of, quote, lost itself, close quotes, in the physical senses. So to regain a higher vantage point, we often need to train ourselves to let go of or to look away from all of those thoughts and forms that are involved in the physical world, because they seem so real to us. They seem so solid. And our belief in that level of being is what, creates its very, very solid sense for us. It's our belief in those things being real that makes them feel so firm, so solid. The next question he asks is, I've heard the phrase, quote, it's all inside you already, close quotes. Can you please elaborate on what this means? And Christian writes, the quote, you, close quotes, that is experiencing everything. Your awareness itself, that is what you really are. And that, quote, substance, close quotes, already actually has everything within it and is connected to everything else. This can be fully and blissfully experienced when one fully lets go of all the physical references and associations. Everything is then experienced as very tangibly within you, as if your real body itself, your real aliveness, was full of all things. Now, again, from the purely physical perspective, we can't even wrap our minds around this. So this is just a bunch of words pointing in the direction of an experience. And I'm prompted to say, as we've talked about before, that if I'm in a situation where something that I'm looking at, I'm examining deeply, seems to be contradictory or a paradox or a conflict to other things that are absolutely true, what that means is I'm just stuck right now in a position where I can't see the big picture. I can't see enough. I'm only seeing a tiny little fraction when it looks to me like there's a conflict or there's a paradox. So then the next question is, if there are spirits and angels, etc., why don't they just show themselves to us clearly? Why don't the guides guide us in a way that we can easily and accurately perceive? And Christian writes, the veil is effective. The guides do guide us every day. Actually, in fact, I believe there are more guides at work than there are, quote, players in the game, close quotes. In other words, people in physical bodies. However, we're often not consciously aware of it, so that can help to have it seem non-existent. Indeed, even as our guides help us, their role is centered around maintaining the veracity of our conscious free will and choice making. All these other guides and spirits and friends without bodies, they respect the rules that we have signed up for, because from their vantage point, they can see how our independent choice making is beneficial to us, and then therefore, by extension, it's beneficial to the whole. The guides help us in various ways that may on the surface appear to be subtle. For instance, they may provide energetic or mental nudges in the forms of feelings or fleeting thoughts. They may send us messages in the form of dreams, or may gently guide small probabilities to help things align in a certain way. So a little nudge here, a little momentum to that thought or behavior, and I just flashed on the idea that people talk about how weird it is that they're driving here, they're doing that, they're going there, and all of a sudden their brakes gave out right here at this weird time. And I just flashed on the thought, with all of the factors that have to move in the right timing and the right sequence, etc., to have a car function properly to go from point A to point B, it's a wonder they don't fall apart more often. And yet there's all kinds of nudges. There's all kinds of wonderful little miracles and coincidences, and C.G. Jung would call it synchronicities. So the answer to the question is, why don't guides and angels speak up and guide us in a way we can tap into? And the answer is they do. And you may not be consciously aware of it, but that doesn't mean it's not still happening. The next question is, many people have reported seeing or interacting with religious figures such as Jesus. What's happening there? And Christian writes, I think there are 4 general categories of how we can label an experience where someone sees a religious figure. If a person has a belief in a religious figure, a non-physical environment itself might portray itself to the experiencer using a religious figure as a part of that environment, because the religious figure is the best kind of a translation or bridge, an experience that's within the language of the experiencer. The second option is that there are guides, non-physical friends or helpers, who may also utilize the appearance of a certain religious figure so as to best and most effectively interact with someone or somebody. Let's say just because it aligns with their belief, they're much more likely to take it seriously if they get a message from a religious figure that is aligned with their religious tradition. In other words, a guide may appear as Jesus or a saint or an archangel if that is what would be best understood by that person. The third option is religious figures like Jesus are very well established in terms of thought forms. They've got great history and energy, and the thought form can be interacted with directly in a very physical way, a very direct way in other reality systems. And the last option here is, it is possible that the soul who played Jesus could indeed play him again. That is, that there could be a direct interaction with the person of Jesus, and that is possible. So maybe people are talking with Jesus, maybe they're channeling Jesus, maybe they're not. For my money, what's far more important than who is the source of a teaching is what's the quality of the teaching? What's the utility of it? As Guy Finley likes to say, there's nothing more practical than true spirituality. The next question here is, if the veil is real, shouldn't it restrict greater awareness all the time? Why would there be any differences between people? And Christian writes, the veil accurately restricts what it is meant to restrict, and it focuses the local consciousness to the physical data stream extremely consistently. In other words, when the veil is down, we think this is all we are. We are just a physical realm. We are just a physical body. However, Christian writes, the veil itself is not a physical thing, like a blanket or a simple human law. It is, and please forgive the significant limitation of language here, it is a set of personal energetic modifications and restrictions that occur on and in and are accepted by the very unique spirit, so they can, quote, be, close quotes, the human. So if you've got a way to exist in the world without a physical body, and you've got this higher S self, this huge capacity for consciousness, and you take a tiny bit of it and focus it on a physical body and put the veil on there, now that tiny bit of your consciousness that thinks all it is a human body can have experiences it could not have otherwise. And the supposition here is that that's why we come into the physical realm, to extend and expand creation itself. So the veil has been specifically chosen, person per person, to be the most effective at restricting consciousness to what they've agreed to in this particular physical existence. The next question he writes is, if there's an afterlife, then how come we receive anesthesia or go to sleep that we just experience nothing? And he writes, while you're human, your cognition is limited to the constraints of the body and the biology. When those constraints change, your local condition changes. The deeper you, the essence of you, your capital S self, the deeper you never changes. It never wanes. But while you are seemingly bound up on this side of the veil and restricted to just physical awareness, the typical situation is that you only remember the physical. That will change later when the constraints lift up. In other words, when you pass away, when your body drops, you will regain awareness of the non-physical adventures that you've had, even while physically alive. Meanwhile, there's an important hint in the following. Note that your awareness itself never vanished during anesthesia or sleep, only the context changed. You experience what it's like being, quote, before, close quotes, falling asleep, and then, quote, after, close quotes, falling asleep, and then something in the middle, we call it dreaming, but you never experience not experiencing. Everything occurs in ever-present awareness. Even content such as physical context changes, which include things like sleep. What's been reduced or missing, the memory of dreams or other non-physical experiences, is also, this is important to keep your daytime identity stable and consistent. So you remember what you need to remember to be able to hold in place this sense of identity as the person that you believe you are today. The next question he's asked is, can those who have passed communicate with those who are still on Earth? And Christian writes, I feel there is not one categorical answer here, but very generally speaking, the answer would be yes. The now unconstrained individual can visit their loved ones and friends. And regarding communication, well, there's a significant vibrational gap between those who are on Earth and those who are no longer earthbound. So communication often requires a vibrational, he puts this in quotes, meeting point, close quotes. We might describe that as moments when the earthly personality is not consumed by dense earth thoughts and is now in a low resistance or in a higher vibrational space. We're always connected, and communication may occur that the local portion of us is not aware of. The limiting factor for local identifiable communication is often how deeply we're focused into the denseness of the physical realm and our labels for it. For many people, the mourning process may only increase what they call the denseness of their focus, which might make recognizing such communications difficult. Nevertheless, love is a very powerful bridge, and so where love exists, communication is possible. The thing that comes to me to talk about is how noticing things, and we've talked about this quite a bit in the Q&A here, what I choose to focus on, what I'm willing to open myself up to. These are really, really important things that shape and create my experience of life. I really don't ever sit in a purely victim role. I'm always actively creating my experience. I may not be creating everything that comes into my life. I may not be creating the earthquake that I just sat through, or the economic recession that has me lose my job, or I may not be creating everything about the external physical realm, and yet I am powerfully active in creating my experience of it as these energies come at me, wave after wave. The next question he asks is channeling real? And Christian writes, when consciousness is engaged in the physical, it retains its connection with higher portions of the self and other selves that exist. So it is possible for a physical individual to, quote, channel, close quotes, another consciousness. Whether it's an individual or a collective consciousness, it's possible to bring it through into the physical. However, for most individuals, what you might call the path to do so is exceptionally cluttered by thoughts, beliefs, and associations with all kinds of physical assumptions. Also, whether to a greater or lesser degree, the channel always has some effect on the information coming through. Furthermore, concepts apparent to beings in other dimensions are often not translatable into earthly language. So, while effective channels do exist, I feel that, generally speaking, healthy discernment is required when evaluating channeled material. Personally, I enjoy and would recommend for consideration the channeled work of Seth, who was channeled by Jane Roberts in the Seth Speaks book series, and Silver Birch, who was channeled through Maurice Barbanel. So, Seth from the Seth Speaks book series or Silver Birch. And again, the critical piece for me in this is they're suggesting that every one of us use our own discernment, because the channel always affects the message. And this truth comes out in the Course in Miracles and the Way of Mastery, and Dr. Michael Rice talks about it in his work, that it is not possible for a human being to receive a signal, process it, and either write it out or speak it out and not influence that message in some way. So when the Course in Miracles was first channeled, it was with this clinical psychologist in a high intensity, high competitive field. And there's a lot of psychological jargon. There's a lot of conceptualization of things that many people have identified as the coloring or the flavoring of having been a professor and a faculty member and a psychologist at this highly competitive institution. So use your own judgment about, is the message useful? When you actually apply it, does it help you move in the direction you want to move in your life? And if it doesn't, please try something else. The next question he's responding to is prayer. Does prayer work? Christian writes, intent always has an effect. When consciousness moves, there is a result. Every thought and intention is always, quote, heard, close quotes. Always sending out ripples, whether we call it prayer or not. However, much of that thought and intention that we wield is rather sloppy, you might say, or unfocused. That is, it's done unconsciously or done in alignment with some earthly pattern or belief that we've learned. Prayer is pointing intention upward. It is a purposeful focus and a shift in the focus momentum. As humans, we often perform that prayer through our various forms that we know, through names or rituals or beliefs, and that's fine. However, it is the deeper being level of our intention or intent, which is the quote, being level, close quotes, is a term from Tom Campbell's work. But it is that being level of intention that wields the power. When our intent is one of focused love for another or toward connection with the divine, there is indeed a power in that. Whenever there is a focused intention on God, light, love, love for another, love for self and others, then there is indeed a power in that. There is a connection with the divine. The power is not the ritual or the action itself, but the power is in the intent, in the love, in this energy of creation expressing in form. The power is in reaching beingness. It's in reaching this capital L life. Focused love is very powerful. And by contrast, lukewarm thought mutterings are generally not very powerful. The constraints of the physical universe are often very firm. It can often be extremely difficult or even nearly impossible to change certain physical outcomes. And yet, on the other hand, the physical arises within spirit, and so spirit has the power, and many, many things are possible in the physical that we might typically believe are physically impossible. Meanwhile, it is often the ego that demands a circumstance can be changed, an ego or fear that has little power in this consciousness space. So there's very little that can't ultimately be changed, and yet as long as we're so focused in the physical, we don't believe it can be changed. One other comment he writes here is that while we are, quote, veiled, close quotes, in other words, while this amnesia about our true nature as pure spirit, while the amnesia is in place, and we believe so deeply in this human drama, there is value in our consciously and genuinely turning towards the divine. In whatever form that may take for us, there is value in clearing space in our human focus and taking human time for the divine. Because in truth, the divine is what we really are. So can we slow down? Can we acknowledge this deeper truth of our true nature? So we have plenty of time for comments and questions. We're just a little bit past the halfway mark. How is this landing for you? What is this stirring up for you? Does prayer work? Yes. Do we have guides? Yes. Are we going to be able to change everything we want to change? Probably not. Is it ultimately possible to change basically everything? Probably. But a big part of the change that we can make for the better in our lives comes from the realization that we are all part of this thing we call the divine, that there's a lot more going on here than we can know about through the five senses. The next category is titled Form versus Spirit. And the question comes up, but I love form. I love music and beautiful places. I love my family and the fun activities and all of the fun things I get to do. If all that form isn't fundamental, I don't feel good. What do you say to someone who's afraid to lose all of that? And Christian writes, what you love endures because love is of you, not of form. And because you are a part of the I am that assigns the value and enjoys the form. That which we create and love arises from beingness and is not lost, yet is ever enjoyed. Meanwhile, you are also not the forms, and so therefore you transcend everything that's in form. The next question, if there is life after death and the physical body and consciousness goes on, then why isn't there a definitive proof rather than only a lot of supporting subjective evidence, which is mostly human reported experiences? And Christian writes, consciousness is fundamental, not the context of the world of matter. So the world of matter, everything that's physical, from a tree to the water vapor to a rock, all of it is not fundamental. Consciousness is. He writes, can you point to anything, anywhere that occurred separate from someone's experience of it? Experience is the report because consciousness is experiencing things, even things that transcend the entire local dimension. So the following is a crude metaphor, but it might help. Imagine you're playing a massive multiplayer online role-playing video game like World of Warcraft. And while you're playing it, you forget that you're sitting at a computer somewhere, so you think you are the elf. Then one day, as the elf who believes almost entirely in the video game world, you ask yourself, if there is a world outside of the computer, then where is the proof of that world in this video game? Well, there are clues in the video game, but generally speaking, it's impossible for that higher dimension from outside the game to be communicated within the game using the ideas in the game and the words in the game and the thought processes that are written into the game. In order to know, the experiencer would need to return to being the player at the computer rather than being the elf. Similarly, you are far more than your human character. And metaphorically, you're sitting at the computer right now. While others have such experiences in the higher realms and they return to this physical game, the only thing they can offer is more reports. They can't offer you the definitive proof you want because it can't be experienced at the level that you're experiencing things right now. I love this set of thought experiments and things. And I believe there's one that's called Flatlander. And I believe there's a little video or a little talk you can see. It might be that there's a video about the book. It might be there's a book. But there's also the idea of there's the Flatland by Edwin Abbott, and it's available on YouTube as about a 4-hour audio file. Somebody reading that book, but there's also the possibility that you can go to YouTube and type in, Captain this is a character that came from the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? Down the Rabbit Hole. Captain Quantum or whatever. And you can see a variety of different presentations to try and help us understand what happens when we are limited by our five senses and our perception. And they use the example of somebody who lives on a two-dimensional plane. And so there's only left or right, forward or back. There's no up or down. And so if you lived if you lived in that reality, this flat plane reality, you wouldn't have any experience of something below you or above you. You would only have experience of the things that you met on that plane. We are so limited by our five senses. We are so limited by the programming that's been pumped into us with language and thought that it crafts, it colors, it determines our perception. So it is entirely possible that there will someday be some evidence that's presented that will help us as we move out of the purely physical realm into an awareness of something far beyond the physical realm, that it will help us. But that very same thing will not help somebody who's still in the physical comprehend the physical and the non-physical simultaneously, because we have the limitations of being in the physical. The next question here is there really such a thing as spiritual growth? Is enlightenment a thing, or have we got it all from birth and it's just about practice? Christian writes, there are no, quote, things, close quotes, unto themselves. There is beingness having an experience of things. And as it works through those experiences of things, it evolves its ability to reflect its true nature into and through those things. We have perfect beingness even before birth, and simultaneously, evolution of love and joy then develops through manifestation that is beingness itself as it applies itself through the choice making. In other words, everything is only real if it gets experienced as being real. And again, this is a philosophical discussion, right? It's not really, if somebody had asked me that question, I would have probably responded with, help me understand how you would use it. The perfect answer, if we had the perfect answer to that question, help me understand how you would use that to change something significant in your life in the next day or two, next week or two. And if you can come up with something that would change significantly, practically in your life, if you had the perfect answer to that, then I would be happy to engage with you in the thought process of generating some viable answers to a question like that. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Is there really enlightenment? Or, do we have guides, and are they sending us messages? For any of those questions, if they are going to lead to a very practical change in your life in the next day or week or so, I'll be happy to explore the options and possibilities with you. But if not, if it's just an intellectual curiosity, I'm not that interested in spending my my day processing that, pretending with that. I hope that makes some sense. I'm sure it's been an interacting factor for a lot of people, and that some people over the years have generated considerable frustration over the fact that I don't pick up the rope for tug of war. And when that happens, I just let it go. And who's there? And is that Sally?
It is Sally. I just wanted to chime in. I don't pick up the rope either, and I'm very selective about how I use my time. And I just want to make a quick comment because I love the way Christian Sundberg can answer questions. Like every time there's a question posed in this book, I think, ooh, that's a big question. How would I navigate that? And then I think, he did that so beautifully well. I love the game metaphor that he brought up, and thank you for all your beautiful reader. And I love having you in my ear at noon every day.
You're entirely welcome and deserving. Boy, the way the world will change when all of us understand that better, huh?
Yes.
When we start to understand that we are deeply welcome and deserving.
Oh my goodness. I use that now. As soon as I heard you say that to me, I passed it on that very day 3 or 4 times. I thought, I love saying that. And people, it's funny the look, when people realize you just said something meaningful and true. So thank you.
You're entirely welcome. Thank you for participating, listening, talking.
Yes, are we coming to the end of the book?
Yeah, we have a I was just looking at the page number, so let me just pull it up here real quick.
It's funny. It's
333 out of 352. So we're down to the last 20 or so.
yes. It's a book I don't want to end. I love the way, I love the way you read it. I am also, I got it on Audible, and I'm listening to the narrator read, but I like your voice so much better. Thanks.
I'm glad you like it. I'm glad it's useful. I'm
So useful.
I'm looking forward to being able to talk to Christian live on what we're planning for right now is, I believe it is Friday the 8th. Yeah. So during our regular 11 a.m. Central, in a couple weeks, Christian Sundberg will be here to participate. So if you've got questions for the author, please bring them or write them down so you don't have to go scrambling at the last minute.
Wonderful. And was that the 8th of September?
No, that's August.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
That is just 2 weeks from this coming Friday. So
I will be here.
all right. Anything else from you? Questions, comments?
I think that's it for now.
Okay. All right. Thanks for being here. We have we'll do a support group again tomorrow night, but no support group tonight. And we have we will try to stick to the Tuesday groups to watch and listen to the 2 remaining Guy Finley talks. He's back to doing live talks on Sundays, and I listened to his talk and Q&A yesterday. And it's going to be interesting to watch how the Life of Learning Foundation, how it evolves, how the work changes. They were talking when we were out there visiting Guy Finley that there's some big changes coming, big projects, whatever. And then in the next breath, they'd say, we can't tell you what they are, but there's big doings coming. And the the primary thing I believe is they were just trying to get everybody to understand that Guy Finley is not retiring. He's not moving from Oregon because he's wanting to go into a retirement facility in Florida. So I'm sure they will let us know in good time when it's appropriate, but he is still doing his teachings and inviting people to come along and presenting much of it for free. And you can learn more about that at guyfinley.org/channel, CHANNEL. And from that webpage, you can get lots and lots of videos to replay, absolutely free. Lots of talks he's done on Wednesdays and Sundays, and feel free to take advantage of that. Also, if you are finding benefit in it, just like if you're finding benefit in Michael and Jeannie's work, please feel free to donate. It's something they're trying to make available to people, whether people have any money for paying for it or not. And yet it's the kind of thing where they haven't figured out how to do it for free. So they're spending their own money to make this radio show and support groups available. And if you're finding it of value, you can contact Jeannie about how you might support them with something other than a financial contribution, or you can go to the website and click on the donate button and send them a financial contribution. And so they are a nonprofit, so that it's tax deductible at the end of the year if you're into that kind of thing. Many people are very into that kind of thing. And I just have to say to people, just as a bit of encouragement, that I just had another couple sessions already today where people are really noticing how different their experience of life is when they are actively using the tools. And that's really important to say very clearly. They're actively using the tools. They're not just reading a book about the tools or having heard about the tools. They're actively applying the tools in their lives. And as they do that, every once in a while when they're having a session, they're struck by how deeply different, how fundamentally different their life experience is when they're willing to take 100% responsibility for what they internally experience in terms of an emotion or an upset, a recurring negative thought, etc. So, I'm, as I've talked about in the past, I have a hard time trying to come up with words that fully express how much better my life has gotten since using these tools. And the essence of it is that because I can't describe it, it's so vastly improved in different ways. I just point at two things. One of them is I spend the tiniest fraction of time in a given day these days in negative emotional states compared to what I did before I learned these tools and before I started using them on a regular basis. So my general experience of mood is dramatically better simply because I don't keep creating those negative emotional states and then blame it on other people and things.
Dr. Tim,
Yes.
I know we're almost at the end of the hour, but I have a quick question about that. I could say the same about the use of the tools. But what I do notice is when I wake up early in the morning, that's when I am least healthy mentally. I can make pretty short work of it, but it seems as if there is a kind of permeability. What am I open to at that hour in the morning that this propensity to feel to remember bad things in the past or feel anxious about something even if it isn't specific, that it's still happening.
Well, so just think about it this way. What if it's just processing, right? What if it's just like Michael says, if you're doing still point breathing, you're processing lots and lots of energy, a super processor, he calls it. What if, because you're doing the work, because you're not spending as much time during your waking hours in those negative emotional states, what if there's more of your brain power to go process through some of those trauma energies from the past? And what if you're getting better and healthier without even realizing it?
That's a nice thought. That's a very nice thought.
So play with that set of thoughts for a while and watch what happens.
What am I making this mean? Yeah, even that. Okay.
Yeah, I think I'll make it mean that I'm getting better.
I like that a lot. Thanks.
Oh, you're entirely welcome and deserving. Thank you. I will remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff that we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Blessings.